everybody. It's Michelle Jackson, and I am here for a Pen Posse Roundtable. Really, really excited about today. We've got 2 hours with a dynamic group of writers, and we're going to be talking about why now is the time to write your book. So, what's going to be great about this conversation is that we're going to talk about race, politics, and the community, and how all these things are playing a role in what's happening in the publishing industry, and why it is so important that we continue to write, tell our stories, control the narrative, and be a beacon of light for the next generation of writers. We know that the country is going through a lot. We have DEI being attacked, book bans. We have the teaching of Black history in many ways being under attack. But in addition to that, we are also facing many challenges in the publishing world, where it is still many of our editorial staffs are predominantly white, where a lot of our books are not being published. And there are a lot of things that I'm seeing that's happening that a lot of people aren't talking about that I wanted to address. So today for 2 hours, we're going to be on here just talking about book writing. And we're going to be talking about how we need to come together as a group, as a community, to make sure that our work is getting all the exposure that it deserves and that our stories are being heard. And so we have an amazing group of authors with us, and we're going to bring them on the screen so they can introduce themselves. As you see ahead above me, you can't see the top. I'll see direct to author. That is a platform that I have that I do ask everyone to drop your books. We have over 500 books by Black writers on this platform, and our goal is to promote independent books. And this is one of the things that we want to talk a little bit about, is how we can build the enterprises, the platforms to help support our work. So for now, let's bring our authors on the screen, get to know them. Hello, hello, hello. How's everybody this morning?
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. This is going to be an exciting conversation. We have a big group today, a big group. And so we're going to give everybody an opportunity to introduce themselves. But in the meantime, there are a couple of things I ask you to do. One, go to my Facebook page at author Michelle D. Jackson. Find this and share it on your page. Once again, author Michelle D. Jackson, and share it on your page. Two, go to YouTube at Black Workshop. And you can also find it and you can share it there as well. Also follow us on YouTube. A couple of things coming up with the Black Writers Workspace. We'll talk about that at the very end. So stick with us. We're going to have a dynamic conversation. You can drop your questions in the chat box on YouTube and on Facebook, and we will get those questions and we're going to get them answered. But for now, we would like to hear from our authors. We're going to start with Khefa. He's going to introduce himself, tell us a little bit about him, and he's going to answer the question that we're going to kick off with, which is, why is now the time to publish a book? Khefa?
So my name is Khefa Nosakhere. I'm a proud native of New Orleans, Louisiana. I'm a graduate of the University of Southern California, Fight On. I'm the oldest of four from a single female-headed household, and I figured out one morning I worked 33 hours to put myself through college. I am a mentor to Black boys and young Black men throughout the country. And I have a current Kickstarter for my third nonfiction book, No Fat Tuesday, The Trouble with New Orleans. And I think it's going to be a very unique book, because most books that talk about New Orleans only focuses on the fun aspect and the culture, but no one is talking about the socioeconomic problems that we have. And so I'm looking forward to presenting, and also I will be the featured speaker in Dallas at the 20th anniversary of Katrina, and my topic is New Orleans culture dead? So pretty soon you'll be seeing those advertisements, and I hope to see everyone online, or if you live in Dallas, we hope to see you on August the 30th at the Dock Bookstore.
Excellent. Kev, so I'm in New Orleans. Kev's in New Orleans. We do coffee from time to time. He's a great guy, and I definitely am excited to have him here to talk about what he's learned in the classroom, what he's learned as he's mentored boys. And so that is important. Thank you so much for being with us. Andrew?
Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Andrew Snorton. I'm based out of the Atlanta, Georgia area. Grew up in the state of New Jersey, alumnus of Wake Forest University. In regards to my moving parts, briefly outside of writing, still do work in education, working with students in middle school and high school, and then on the press and media end, not only working with different entities with how they connect with different aspects of media, but also credentialed to cover members of Congress, to college and professional sports, things along those lines. On the writing end, since 2017, I've been blessed to publish 4 books, an audiobook series, and a coffee partnership with one of the coffee houses, and been blessed to do signings and festivals pretty much across the Southeast, Midwest, East Coast. In regards to why now, as others are probably going to touch base on, given the current climate and given the efforts to marginalize narratives and stories of impact that fall outside the mainstream, it's important, critical, and essential that to the best of our ability, we share these narratives of importance and relevance, do what we can to amplify, and do what we can to constructively push back against efforts to silence our voices.
Absolutely. No silencing our voices. Book bans doesn't mean that we stop writing. And that's important because it's getting a lot of attention, but we have to keep our eyes on the prize and not be distracted. So that's great. Thank you, Andrew, for being with us. He's been with us in the past. I know we're going to have a great conversation. We have Michelle Parks, who is the second Michelle on the screen. Well, she's the first Michelle on the screen, and she spells her name correctly. So I'm loving that. But we're going to call her. She's Mimi today, so there's no confusion. So Mimi, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here with y'all. I'm Mimi. I'm a writer, a singer, and a visual artist. I live in Cairo, Egypt. I've been here 6 years. This is my 3rd time living here. I usually craft tales and characters that embody our quiet, sensual self. And I write because I am way past the veracity of American history being proliferated unchallenged. There's more to my life than surviving white people, and I'm really sick of hearing that narrative as I travel. I've raised 4 kids. I've lived in 10 countries. I speak 8 languages. I've been a lot of places. And the common denominator is that I'm a unicorn to them, and I'm like, everybody I know is like me, but they don't know that because they don't read our stories. They don't see us, they don't hear us talking. So when I walk into the room, they're like, oh, and I'm like, no, everyone I know is educated and has their stuff together. Everyone I know is going through life their way. So anyway, that's why I'm here. Why is now the time to write? I wrote something. It's short. Of course, the Harriet Tubmans and the Oprah Winfreys are an integral part of our history. However, Shaniqua Jenkins, who finally made rent this month and was able to buy her baby a new pair of shoes, is just as relevant to our diasporic discourse. Those are stories that need to be told. Nobody hears about the Black single mom who, against all odds, kept her kids from getting shot or stayed out of jail. That is a story that needs to be told, and it's relevant, And so when I walk into the room, those are the stories I tell. But I also tell the lovely part. If you guys see my podcast, I talk about lovely things. I don't talk about things that make me angry. Let's just say that. So anyway, I'm happy to be here, and I look forward to our discussion.
I think you're going to add a great amount of insight to this conversation. So thank you so much for being with us. Ms. Winn, introduce yourself.
Good morning. My name is Arilia Winn. I'm an author publisher, founder of Winn Publications, which is an author publisher publishing company. I've published to date 27 books. I have another book coming out in April, and so that will be book number 28. I graduated from the best HBCU there is out there, Bethune-Cookman University, by Mary McLeod Bethune. She was the founder, and I've been in the book publishing industry for 11 years, been in my own company for 7. And I've been saying this, so I'm glad that we're finally having this conversation, that now is the time, especially for Black voices, to be writing books, publishing books, and really not just doing that, but marketing the books, speaking up, showing up, and getting out there and spreading the word, whether it be books that tell our own history or sci-fi, romance, anything. We know that as Black people, we come through with excellence. That's just a part of our DNA. And so it's about time. It's been time. Yesterday was the day to get started. And so today is too late. And so if you're, a person of color thinking about writing and publishing a book, let's go. If you're watching this, you have plenty of resources here on the screen to help you get started. Definitely myself included. I'm someone who writes books, children's books, mostly books about mental health and wellness, especially for authors. I'm a person first and I'm an author second. And so that's just really big to me. And so I'm just really grateful to be here. Thank you so much, Michelle, for this platform. I look forward to our conversation today.
Excellent. Thank you for joining us. Ayoka, am I pronouncing that correctly? Okay.
Good morning. My name is Ayoka B. I'm an avid reader. I want to point that out because I want to make sure we talk about the other side today, readers. I'm also an indie author and a podcaster. My podcast is called Writing While Black. So we talk about a lot of these issues. And right now, well, not even just now, but, the cross-section or the intersection, I should say, of literacy and then the other side of writing while Black, we need to be talking about both of those sides. I am a multi-genre writer, so I write poetry. I'm working on a YA novel. I have last year on Black Love Day, I published my debut novel, which is a not romance. We can talk about that later, but it focuses on all types of love, all the types of love that sustain a romantic love. So I call it a love story. And again, a little bit more about why now is the time to write a book. I've always been an avid reader, and books are medicine for the reader and the writer. Not to mention that artists, and I consider myself an artist, artists have always in our community pushed discussion, uplifted us, and were at the forefront of what needed to be done. So I want us to remember that and remember that power and history that we have when it comes to artists and expression and what that can do for the receiver, whether it's a reader, whether it's a audience member, whatever your medium and however it's being received, the impact that has on community. So I'm excited to talk today.
Excellent, excellent. You said something I really love. Books are medicine. And that is what we're going to talk about, is that the healing the book gives to us and to the community is very, very important. So Kebra, you're up. Introduce yourself.
Okay. Good morning. So my name is Kebra Moore. I am the owner of Welcome to the Storm Publishing. And I am also an author. I've authored 2 novels, 3 short stories, and they all went #1 on Amazon. I just recently am the visionary author to Our Power, the anthology, Melanated Queens Rising Beyond Disabilities, which is a group of collective women, melanated women, talking about our individual disability. As I myself have a disability, I was in a car accident, so I'm paraplegic. So I decided I want to get some women together so we can talk about what we face, the adversity and the resilience of who we are and what we are becoming. I'm a mother, a wife of 25 years. I am a graduate of Claflin University in Orangeburg, South Carolina, and I currently reside in Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas. I am familiar with the book doc and all of that good stuff. And that's why I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. And I have my own lipstick line called Tropical Storm Collections. I'm also very ecstatic to be here with you all today.
Well, thank you so much for being with us. This is a great group, everybody. Drop your questions because we're here to talk to you. Because our goal today is to really encourage and inspire everyone to continue to write. Like, let's not get distracted with what is happening in the world. We know we're facing a lot of things, but we need to continue to write. And so this is the time. And each and every one of us have gone through the writing process. We understand how tough it is. We've had to make decisions about whether or not we want to self-publish or try to go after a traditional publisher. We've had to make decisions about who's going to edit it, what the book cover is going to look like. Do I put my face on the back of the book? How is this book going to influence the community? All of us have had to think about these things because writers, we're dynamic in the fact that we have learned how to compartmentalize things, write it on paper, express ourselves, and be very authentic in that process. So that's why I love talking to writers. So I want to talk a little bit about what I've seen, what I've been feeling, and what I feel is something we need to be discussing as all these things swirl around. DEI, book bans, no Black history. Publishing is still not open to us the way it should be. Something that I've noticed, though, as someone who's constantly building content for the Black Writers Workspace. Oh, and I didn't tell you, I am a 3-time published author as well. 2 books, 2 award-winning books. I own directtoauthor.com. I am the founder of Black Writers Workspace, Black Ink Book Festival, Chapter 1 Writing Competition. I have spent the last 4 years doing nothing but helping Black writers. And that is my passion. So that's who I am. You can always find my stuff at author Michelle D. Jackson. But I'm around. So please don't hesitate to get in contact with me. But what I've been seeing, and this is the first question or the second question I want everybody to start thinking about is, we during COVID saw a lot of books getting publishing deals, a lot because it was the social unrest because of George Floyd. It was Black Lives Matter. And there were publishers who were trying to course correct on not giving a lot of us deals. And I know a lot of Black authors who got deals during COVID, during the whole COVID experience, because of, I guess what people would say is DEI, wanting to make sure that they were being fair about these things. So I've noticed that. Since then, I've also noticed that there are fewer articles out there about Black writers. I'm constantly trolling looking for articles. There's so few of them out there. So now we've gone from, we're going to put you on a pedestal to now we're going to take you off of that pedestal. I've noticed that there's a decline in the number of people at book fairs. I've noticed that once again, we're not getting these publishing deals. So there's so much out there that we need to be considering. I've been reading a lot of articles and there's so much data to show that things are not going in a good direction for us as writers. And it's kind of like it's trying to simmer down our voice. Now, let's talk about why or what these books do for the Black community. So that's the first question I want to pose to anyone. And you can either raise your hand or we can go around. But I just want to talk about what these books bring to the Black community and what books did for you as a writer, as a person growing up. Andrew, you want to start?
Yes. And you hit so many key and critical topics, which is what makes today so important. In going to the second part of that, what books can do for, I'll just say, the Black community. The underlying statement is so much. It is learning about or relearning about who you are and whose you are in regards to your identity through the lens of Blackness, through the lens of gender. You're also seeing that the Black narrative or the Black story is a lot more diverse. It's not monolithic. There are so many different directions. And by having, authors, not only like us who are on the call, but those who are not, every story has relevance, and we have to make sure we're doing what we can because it builds up that creative thinking and imagination and reimagination and problem solving. It helps build up our literacy and learning because, as most of the authors already know on here, when you think about the neutering or dumbing down of the population, it's intentional. So people like us who are sharing these stories, discovering, rediscovering, that's just scratching the surface. I'm sure everyone else is going to tap into. For me, when I look back, especially as an elementary school student, going to the public library and every Saturday, not just during Black History Month, but like every Saturday, getting that exposure to Black history and culture and understanding and awareness. You talk about identity and pride and self-esteem and image and understanding the gifts and talents that you have and how you can use it for the greater good. I mean, those are just starting and scratching the surface that I know everyone else is definitely going to add to.
Absolutely. Early, you want to, Ms. Winn, you want to chime in and talk about what is it that these books are doing? Because I think the people out there need to know that, first of all, we all define success differently. Some people write books and they only want to make money. You know, it's like, I'm going to write this book for the reader and I'm going to make money. And so success is equated to how many books sold. Some of us are writing books because it's healing us. It literally is healing us and it's healing the community. We've gone through so much. We're dumping on these pages our passions, our love, our joys, everything so that we can connect with an audience. We don't care about if we become a best-selling author. We just want to put the work out there. And so many of us also understand that if we're not speaking to our community, nobody else is, right? So that's why, as Andrew said, when you saw those characters in the books when you were young and they were Black, they looked like you felt connected to them. You felt like, my goodness, these are real heroes. I mean, Richard Wright was my hero growing up. Like, I loved reading his work, and it was serious work, but it made me feel seen. So, Ms. Winn, talk to us about what Black books have done for you and what you think they do for the community. And for those of you out there, drop your questions.
Yeah. So, as a single mom, I'll go there. My daughter, before she could even read, I had her at the library showing her different books. As she's grown up, she knows what I do. She knows that I write books and I publish books. In fact, I've written and published books with her, just to give her that experience as well. But before we did that, she was getting books from different authors that I knew. One particular book, I think it was called Over the Moon or something. It was a little Black girl as an astronaut. And she said, Mom, what? Little Black girls can be astronauts, is it? Of course they can. I'm like, little Black girls can do whatever. She's like, that little girl looks like me. I said, yeah, she's probably your cousin or something. And she was like, wow. And I said, yeah, representation matters, right? And it matters not just for our children, but it matters for ourselves as adults as well, to just that inspiration. That planted a seed into her, like, oh, wow. She's like, you know that author? I do know that author. Would you like to talk to him? Yeah, actually, I would. So she's smiling from ear to ear because she's like, wow, my mom, this is pretty cool. I said, yeah. And I explained to her, and I try to have these conversations as often and as natural as possible that, for me as an author, but as also a publisher, as a Black woman in this space where only 4% of the book publishing industry looks like me, it's important that I'm in this area and I'm taking up space and I'm putting out not only my work, her work, but other underrepresented people of color, specifically Black people, specifically Black women as well, and men, because men, I'm going to be honest, as a publisher, from what I've seen, there's not a lot. I don't have a lot of Black male author clients, and so that's just from my experience. But it's so important, again, for representation, inspiration, but also legacy. I told my daughter, I said, after I'm long gone, my books will live on. You'll always have a piece of your mother on Amazon.com or in the house or wherever my books are at the time. Like, this lasts forever. I grew up around storytellers, and I wish they would have written a book. What? My grandpa, he could make up a story. You wouldn't know if it was true or false, but the story was that good. I'm like, man, I wish he would have written it down. I wish he would have documented his imagination, his ideas, documented our history through a fiction story. I wish he would have done that just to maintain that history, to maintain that legacy for him to live on. And so that's
Right.
why it's important. That's what books do for us is, I mean, a book will live on, a book will live forever. And it's a physical representation of our life, and it lives forever. Mhm.
So this idea, and I'm going to get to some more of you. We're going to go to Mr. Kef now because I know he and Mimi. I mean, Mimi is not only a world traveler, but she's lived in many places, and we are told that we're from the dark continent, right? No history before we got to the shores of this continent as slaves. So little we know about our past if we aren't intentional about looking it up. There was a reason why slave owners kept books from us, right? There was a reason why they did not let you read as a slave, because there is so much power in telling your own story. And what we can do now as self-published authors is we can do just that. It is a threat to know that a person can actually publish a book on Amazon, say whatever they feel, tell their story their way, control the narrative, and no one can really do anything about it. That is, to me, why we have book bans. So, Kev, let's go to you. What do you think these books have done for the community? What have you seen the books do, and how have Black books influenced your life? Hold on. There you go.
So there are, let me try to answer that question as directly as I can. So I am a scholar, and I believe that my responsibility is to educate and uplift people who look like me, melanated people, and discussing what happened to us. What happened to us is unusual in human history. No other group, to my knowledge, have been given an image of God in the image of their oppressor. No other group was told they are nothing. And all of our problems here in America harken back to that. We have two giants from our past, Dr. Francis Cress Welsing and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I'd like to share my favorite quote from Dr. Welsing. And she said, "Black people do not see the war being waged against us because we are afraid and we don't want to. We are engaging in behavior designed specifically to block out the war being waged against us, our true reality." And so I sit at the feet of scholars like Dr. Welsing, Doc Ben, Yusuf Ben Yakanan, John Heinrich Clark, Dr. Ivan Van Sertima, George G.M. James, the author of Stolen Legacy. Writers have a very sacred task at telling our story. I have a dear friend from undergrad who was a musician, and one day we had a discussion, and I said, "So Taurus, what type of music do you do?" And he didn't want to label it. And I said, "Oh, so you do country and bluegrass?" "Oh, no, Kev." I said, "Well, that's why you need to label what you do, because if you let someone else label it, you're not going to like that label." And so with this topic, Michelle, which is so timely and so great, and I'm very thankful to finally be here. My message in terms of the importance of melanated people telling their story, I can't overstate that. I may not have the words to express just how important it is. Everyone else does. Every other race, when they are proud, when a Hispanic person is proud of Hispanic culture, that's wonderful. When people from around the world are proud of their culture, that's great. But when we do it, we're militant, we're nuts, we have to start calling everybody on that. All right? Everybody else can tell their story, okay? no one will fix their mouth to tell a Native American, do not talk about the Trail of Tears. Don't talk about the Holocaust. But we are told, why are you still talking about slavery? And as a group, and when I say group, I mean us, we have a sacred duty to continue the fight of Senator Shirley Chisholm, Fannie Lou Hamer, so on and so forth. If you look at history, if you look at the 1920s, the 30s, the 40s, what we have today, we have a few millionaires, we have a few Black millionaires, but the Black masses are still suffering. We may not have time to fully go into that, but what I see, the only way that we are going to rise up out of our oppression is to continue to tell our stories. One of the things that I'm going to talk about on my book tours and on my lectures, we have to focus. In Black America, we have investment groups, we have policy groups, we have Black farmers, we have Black people who make things, but what the masses, what we don't do, we don't support those things I named enough. They exist, but Black America, we need a concerted effort to get more Black people to invest. We need more Black manufacturers. One of our problems is that we don't make enough. If you are landless and you don't make anything, you will be powerless. And that is our problem. We have Black lobbyists, we have Black politicians, we have Black attorneys, we have Black engineers, but we need a focused, national, consistent plan to strengthen Black banks, Black insurance companies, Black manufacturers, Black schools where we control the curriculum and we teach our children about Martin Delaney. During Black History Month, you get the same four people, Dr. King, Oprah, Harriet Tubman, and Obama, because they're safe. So starting this year, I certainly will use my platform. But again, in closing, I cannot overstate the importance of us telling our own story. And the late, great Toni Morrison said, if there is a book that you would like to read and it has not been written, then you must write it.
Absolutely. Mimi, talk to us. What do you feel about this idea of how our books are impacting the Black community? And then I'm going to come next. The next question is going to be about music, because I can't talk about books without talking about music. So music is always something everybody get upset with me about. But we're going to talk a little bit about what are we empowering our community? So that's going to be, Ayoka, my next question for you. Are we really empowering our community with the stories that we're telling? And we're saying great things. We need to tell these stories. I love this. We need to control the narrative. We need to keep in mind that representation matters, that this is our legacy, that we have a sacred task. I like that Kev said that. We have a sacred task of telling our stories. But what we're putting in these books, what we're putting out there about the Black community, is it empowering us or is it hurting us? And so, Mimi, talk to us about your feelings about that. Mm-hmm.
So I grew up on the south side of Chicago in the 70s. And I operate from a micro perspective, the very small. I don't do movements or we should anything. I deal with the like in front of me kind of thing. The first thing I published was a story called To All Black Children from All Black Mothers. And it was a direct rebuttal to the one that y'all know what I'm talking about. Because the first time I read that, I was so angry, but that's a whole other thing. So growing up on the south side of Chicago, every story that I read about us was miserable. Miserable. It was about suffering, enduring. Not that it was a bad thing. Not that these people were not necessary. Not that they weren't great. That's not what I'm saying. But imagine an 8-year-old learning that my legacy is suffering at the hands of people who hate us, and then I see on the news, you got these women, Black women, marching peacefully but she's wearing a girdle, high heels, her hair is straightened, and she's got makeup on while she's fighting off white people and dogs. So my 8-year-old question to my mother was, why is she dressed like that and she's in battle? This is war. You know, I didn't read any stories where we were living, thriving, loving, cooking, braiding hair, loving our man, being proposed to. I want to see a romantic story where Black people are proposing to each other. I didn't see that. So my mission was to create that. You know, one of the questions you asked was what book changed my life? It was a book I got off this library in a Black neighborhood called the Far Pavilions. Didn't know who this woman was. The book was 1,000 pages. I liked it because it was 1,000 pages. And it was about the mutiny in India. Nothing to do with us. But it was so beautifully written that I was vested in those characters. They were live, they were vibrant, they were living. Horrible time. And I said, I want that. You know, and so from the moment I started having my kids, I was on a mission to create that outside of the Black American bubble. I take Black American with me everywhere I go. I am the narrative. I am the book. I am the history, you know, so I don't need any of that, you know, but I wanted my kids to see people living and thriving in their skin, in their element. You know, I want to see them happy in car accident. You know, I've had like 4 car accidents. I fell off a cliff. I just stuff, you know, we lived, but I did this as a Black woman in the world. And so the story that I tell is a story of us living. So how have books influenced us? The 70s books influenced us to let us know that suffering was a rite of passage and that we can endure. We will prevail because here we are. But that was what books did for us. And I was angry my entire childhood because my grandparents didn't look like that. My mom was fabulous. She's still fabulous, you know, but I mean, that's not a rite of passage. And so I avoided any Black literature because it was traumatic. My kids didn't read that stuff until they got to college because I didn't want them understanding, by the way, son, you're Black and everyone's out to get you. And that's all you're ever going to be. Mm-hmm. No, my son is a king. You know, my daughters are queens because they could walk in their skin in 10 countries and hold it down because I'm their mom. You know what I mean? But I didn't get that from literature. I got that we're strong, yes, and that we are educated, yes, but I didn't get that we can fight back. I've had more fist fights in the street in countries than I care to recount, and I won. But that was because of the intestinal fortitude that I saw exhibited in my community by people who were on their hustle. So back to your question, I have mixed feelings about that, what books did for us. I think it's good to see us in print. But my experience, I didn't see us doing what we needed to do. I saw us suffering and it was traumatic. So I don't know if other people had the same experience.
No, I love that you brought it up from this perspective because this is a different way of looking at it. And I appreciate it because you're absolutely right. But this goes back to who's controlling the narrative. Who's controlling the
This is the thing, you know?
Right.
That's the other side of the coin.
Is the fact a lot of the books that we were exposed to, especially growing up, were not about people just living. It was a struggle. I mean, the first book I read at 13.
There's only 4. Yeah.
Right. The first book I read at 13 was the autobiography of Malcolm X. And it was so great that I started there. That was my first full chapter book. And I read it because a boyfriend challenged me to read it. And it changed my life to see Malcolm X go through the transformation that he made as a human, as a man. That changed how I saw myself, my father, my mother, my brothers, and everybody, because it showed me that we have the fortitude to excel. We are magical people. So, Ayoka, talk to us about this. What changed your life? And I thank you, Mimi, for that. I love the idea of someone saying, look, the books that I read made me feel like it was all struggle. And I hear that a lot now too. People say, why Black people write all about the hood and gangsters? And I'm like, well, that's some of our realities. You can't, it is some of our realities. You can't you can't change it, but there are books and there are stories that are about love and peace. I feel like that about movies, Mimi. Every time I see a period piece, I have to like, it's so hard for me to watch a period piece. It's like everything is back in slavery, and it's like, oh boy, this is too heavy. I just want to give me something light. But Ayoka, talk to us. I don't want to take your time up. Talk to us. What do you feel about this?
I guess in terms of the impact of books on us, I mean, I think there's a range, it depends on the books you're reading, and the authors, because I know that Mimi's experience is real. It just wasn't my experience, because my mother, before I knew what the term was, she was a Pan-Africanist, and that's how she raised me. So all I knew was black is black is black, and everybody was beautiful. She had friends that were from all over, and they would come. I grew up in DC, so there was a lot of energy in DC, during that time around racial pride and beauty and that sort of thing. And so I grew up with books that showed me that, but my mom was, curating them. And so that's how I went out into the world, which was a good thing, because from kindergarten, I was in white schools, which would, when I was a little girl, it was good, because it was before everybody knew what this was, and their parents got in their ears and stuff like that. But as I got older, I needed that armor. I already had it baked in. But I think what books, what they do for us and do for the community, it can be powerful. It can go either way. So, we have all of these beautiful stories that are different. I think some people, not all, but I beg emerging authors and authors that are out there now to not chase trends. Write your stories that you want to write. Write the stories that tell about who you are. They don't have to be nonfiction. Who you are is going to end up on the page regardless. I tell people that all the time. And we have all these different and beautiful stories and ideas and things, and all these genres out here, or not. I'm about breaking rules. You ain't got to fit into a genre, but I'm just saying that, I think, although, yes, some of us have lived or known or had family that were street hustlers and mobs and all of that, and it is our reality, but there are people who write that and it's not their lived reality. Mm-hmm. And so I want people to challenge themselves to write something different, to write something that is going to center us in a different way. When I write, I want, there are going to be things that happen in the story that, are unfortunate or tragic or whatever, but I want my reader to leave my stories or poetry or whatever with a warmness and a fondness and a love. I center Black love and Black joy in what I write. And I'm intentional in doing that.
Because that's exactly what this article, what this comment on the screen says about you, which is obviously a fan, and I love this. She said that your book, that your stories of a Black love, where Black people are creating joy and embracing love and making choices that make their souls sing. That for a reader to say that, she didn't say, this is a best-selling author who's made $1 million and blah, blah, blah. Maybe you are, maybe you haven't, but it's the way the words touched her. And that's why we need to continue to write. It is important that we continue to write before the engagement. I love that. You said something about curating. Mm-hmm. I grew up in an all-Black community across from an HBCU. I grew up in the projects. So it was the projects, it was the HBCU, and I'm in an all-Black community. Like literally, there may have been 5 white people at my high school.
Okay.
So everything we learned was about Black culture. You know,
Yeah.
I read Shakespeare. My favorite book growing up was The Diary of Anne Frank, one of them anyway. We read all that, but we also read Maya and Toni Morrison. And I mean, it was just, it was so filled with Black pride that although I went to a predominantly white college, I took that pride with me. And I minored in African American studies, and I've been working with Black people to some capacity my whole career. So when you have people to curate that for you, show you the good books that are going to give you joy and not just, as Mimi said, those that are tragic, because there are many of them out there like that, it does make a big difference. So talk to us, Kebra, about your experiences when it comes to books and the Black community.
So, as I stated earlier, with me being an author as well, one of my first books, I have a pseudonym, which is Midnight Storm. And we've actually put some books on your direct author.com. So when I wrote Love, Lies, and Music, it's crazy because I did it as a hobby. My husband was stationed in Afghanistan, and I was just writing him little stories. And a girlfriend of mine was like, hey, you should make it to a novel. I'm like, really? Because she know I love to write. So it took me about 10 years, honestly, to write this first book because it wasn't something that I was just doing. It was just something I was doing as a hobby. So when my son graduated from high school, he went to college. I was like, you know what? Let me just go ahead and do this and see where it's going to go. It went #1 on Amazon. Was so surprised. Was like, wow, I know was going to do this. But going back off on what Ayoka, I'm sorry if I pronounced your name wrong, said that I wanted to write about Black love as well. The book is called Love, Lies, and Music. I wanted some drama to be in there, but I also wanted to speak on the love portion of it, that Black people can find love. One of my girlfriends that read the book told me, well, why do all your characters got to have bad bodies? I say, because why can't we look good? I'm like, I'm tired. I've read books where author, basically made the character look so bad. And I read a lot of her books and I'm like, does she have what kind of complex this author had? Because everybody in her book did not represented us well. And it's her own thing. But I wanted to change the narrative, have beautiful Black people. You go through drama, you have issues in relationship, but you still find that person that you love. And that's what I wanted to create for my audience. And then when I did part 2, I was like, okay, you know what? I want to do a little bit different. I want to still make some love in there where a couple is going through these issues, but I want to be a mature thing where we're going to go through these issues. We're going to go through it maturely instead of just being all ratchet and ghetto. I'm not going to do all that in the book because, as someone said earlier, sometimes we see that in the books. You get tired of seeing it. You get tired of reading about that. We're all not ghetto. Everything don't have to be in the ghetto. We can say that we got real Black love. So I wanted my stories to be differently, focusing on love as well, but also having a little bit of drama in there as well. So it's crazy. So one of my first books that I read was The Boxcar Children. And I still love the Boxcar Children series. I love that book. So I still, and then as an adult, one of my first book was The Coldest Winter Ever. Then after I read that, I just got into more Black authors and I have over maybe 200 books on my bookshelf. I'm definitely a reader. I got into Audible now. So, but going back to your question, I just wanted to spin the narrative. I didn't want all of us to think, I didn't want my readers to come across as if we as Black people, as melanated people, that's all we know, because it's more than just the major drama, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. Great round. There's so much said about the importance of books, and we're tackling this because we want our writers out there, especially those on the Black Writers Workspace, to be encouraged to continue to write. Tell your story, be authentic. Do not let what's happening in this world distract you from moving forward. There is just so much that I see. I mean, we're going to talk a little bit about publishing and marketing and writing at some point, but there's so much that I see that is a distraction. And but we have to stay the course because these books are healing. And I have read so many books. I can remember reading books by T.D. Jakes and Ivania Van Zant when I was at my lowest point after college. I can remember every stage of my life having a Black book that helped me to get to where I wanted to go. But now that we have self-publishing, there are so many more books out there. We can tackle things that some people don't want to hear about. I know I interviewed a gentleman, Emmanuel Kulu, who wrote a book about, Blacks in Egypt. And it was very controversial because there are still people who don't consider the Egyptians to be Africans per se, or Black Africans. And so there are things that we can do with these books. There are topics and issues that we can tackle that the mainstream don't want to see tackled, because it gives us an opportunity to heal ourselves. Now, what bothers me about what everyone says is, there isn't enough Black love, Black joy. There isn't enough talk about real history, real Black history, because once again, we're facing this issue of who's controlling the narrative. And the power of controlling the narrative is how we've been kind of suffocated. Our voices have been eliminated. So let's talk about this book ban. Let's just go there, everybody. You can open your mic up if you want to. I'm going to give you a couple of facts, and then we're going to talk about what you think about this book ban and what do we do as a community to overcome it. In 2023-2024 school year, PEN America documented 10,046 instances of school book bans affecting 4,200 unique titles. The targeted books: authors of color, LGBTQ plus authors, and women, as well as books about racism, sexuality, gender, and history. A couple of books that have been banned: 1984 by George Orwell. Interestingly, the Adventures of Huck Finn, The Catcher in the Rye, The Color Purple, and so many other books that are out there. Let's talk about this thing. What is this really about? And there are
Color Purple.
Some schools have, yes. What I've realized is that what I learned is that a lot of areas, particularly some areas in Florida, it could be one person complaining. It doesn't necessarily mean that there are communities of people stepping up and saying, oh, there's a rape scene in The Color Purple, we think it should be taken out. It could be one person. And because there are organizations around the country filled with people who are sent out to complain about certain books, our kids are not getting an opportunity to learn from the experiences of diverse writers simply because this one person felt that what was in the book was no good. How do we counter this? How do we fix this? How do we move beyond this? Anybody? Andrew, talk to me.
Yeah. The condensed version is we have to fight battles on multiple fronts. And here's what I mean by this. In regards to dealing with the mainstream, we already know the mainstream is going to do what they can to marginalize. We've already established that. We still have to fight, push, and advocate for these particular books. When you said 1984, I remember reading that in high school. And unfortunately, some of the stuff that he talked about, you're seeing it played out. But we still have to advocate and fight for these particular works across the board to be in mainstream, because if not, you think about that large audience who needs to know, who's not going to know, or wants to bury it under the rug. By the same token, and this is what makes what all of us are doing so important, in regards to self-advocacy, this is where our independent bookstores are critical. This is where our own festivals, whether mainstream book festivals that you're able to plug into, or our festivals, you have to be able to do. And of course, in regards to putting the slight media slant on it, you cannot always rely on mainstream media to even pick up the story or pick up the narrative. This is where, in today's landscape, for those of us who do have podcasts, for those of us who do write for different publications, for those of us who are credentialed, and I've interviewed fellow authors, We have to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. If we focus on one sphere, we still have this other sphere that we got to battle, fight, and claw. So we have to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time, advocate and fight the battles in the mainstream, but we have to go ahead and build up, and as other people have tapped into, better utilize our internal and in-house resources in order to strike a better measure of balance. Because we know, big picture, without going too deep on how society works, you identify what you want to marginalize to maintain a certain way of life, and you do that as consistently as possible. So you're always having to push back, basically push back and push forward.
Absolutely. I think absolutely. I mean, we have to think about what they're taking from us, but we also need to look at what it is that they're fighting against, and that is truth and authenticity in what our experiences have been in this country. So anybody else want to talk about the book bans?
I do.
I'm sure.
I want us to, yes, I want us to work on different fronts, but I want to concentrate on community. I want to concentrate on the grassroots level and on the family level. You know, just like my mother curated books for me, just the way I did it for my children, that's we can't rely on the schools to do these things, especially when, I mean, look, we know what it is. Nothing new is happening. It's just the details are different. You know, our ancestors went through all of the things that we're seeing now. It just looked different, but the end goal was the same. We're still within this system that works a specific way. And so I just want us to get back to community. I want us to work communally because that is where our power is, and talk about, you know, not be afraid to talk about literacy and the importance of literacy, and not have shame around people who are illiterate for whatever reason. It doesn't really matter why they're illiterate, but providing spaces where they can overcome that, and we can help get their children on a different path and get them to where they need to be too. But I think communally, you know, the book bans are going to do what they do, and they're not going away. They're just revving up. So let's talk about, as authors, as readers, as parents, as you know, teachers, pastors, all the people in the community, we need to talk about these issues and be real about it. I love the fact that independent bookstores are revving up their programming and talking in the community about some of these issues. Yes, there are author talks that also talk about those too, but doing community programs that are led by bookstores, I love seeing that. I get so excited when I see it. And I just think that it has, individually, we have to play a role in it. You know, we have to look at and pay attention to what's going on in the libraries, you know, what they're trying to do in terms of spending for libraries, and what is our role in that? How can we combat that? You know, they have a list of things that they want readers to do, that they want community members to do. Some of the simple things are getting a library card if you don't have it, using your library card, you know, letting your representatives know how critical the library is to you and your life, and what, because that programming that happens in libraries, which is on, of course, the neighborhood level, those are resources that marginalized people are using, you know, whether it's you got workforce development things going on, you got, you know, not just literary specific things and literacy related things. So I want to also push that we need in the community, we need to be paying attention to these things. Yes, there is like a, what do you call it? The fire hose, of stuff going on. It is. But literacy is critical to, knowledge, to power, to self-love, all of these critical things that we need. And so
Right.
I want us to be talking about that more.
I think that, I want us to stop being shocked by people doing what they've, like you said, always done. I want us to stop being shocked by it. I mean, really, I am so not shocked. I always say this, and it may sound horrible, but the reality is that 200 years of slavery, everybody, 200. Some people say 4. We got to stop being shocked. And we have to start fighting back and preparing ourselves for a world that is going to look differently. At least we know for the next 4 years, it's going to look different. And so, as you said, we have to counter by curating. You have a child at home, teach them where you are about Black history, put the books on your shelf, tell them about the authors you want them to know about. If the school's not going to do it, then you do it. And I think it's important that we keep that in mind, because the book bans are probably going to get worse, considering I was reading today about the African American Museum being possibly defunded. This museum, I don't know if you've been there in DC, it is amazing. So when you talk about what's being done, this is it's an assault on all of us, but it's also a distraction still, because there are bigger things being done on the other side. So let's not forget to misalign ourselves with the fact that, yes, okay, we're going to defund all these things, that the ideologies we don't agree with, but won't tell you what those ideologies are. We know what they are. They're things that are about diversity, about our past, about slavery. They don't want people to know about that. Okay, fine. But also there are some bigger things going on that could have some much longer term impacts on us as well. So anybody else want to chime in on the book ban?
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Mimi.
So what I was going to say was, I own a language school for like 20 years. I teach all around the world with my kids. And I like the idea of building community, curating everything that everyone is saying. And I'm very, very good at that. So here in Egypt, surprisingly, all of my students are Korean. They're learning English. And they go to, the American, the British, and the different international schools. They learn nothing about U.S. history, Black people in U.S. history, except that we were slaves. So I challenge my students, like, why would you believe that? Or one of the students, I think he was like 12, 13. He said, yeah, George Washington was the greatest president. I said, what year was that? I said, so what were Black people doing in the U.S. at that year? I just looked at him and he said, oh. I said, so why would you look at my Black face and say he was a good president? And it was just dead air like that. He went back to school the next day and called the question. So back to the original idea, in our own spheres of influence, we need to call the question. This is battle. I like the idea that your mom curated your reading. I love that. I like the idea of building community. So everywhere that I go, I challenge. When we lived in France, I did a presentation at the school on Black history. This is what's up. Everywhere I go on a smaller level, like I said before, I let them know, because the book bans, I didn't even know about it. I don't watch the news. I live in a vacuum on purpose because it's traumatic. So this is the first I'm hearing about the book bans. I'm serious, and I'm not even embarrassed. But the only way to fight that is, each one teach one. We're up from slavery. I'm the progeny of strange fruit. I have no problem telling people that, and I sit here chilling, but I make sure that everyone within my sphere of influence understand what my grandfather did, who my mom is, my great grandmother who had 18 kids in Mississippi, and who lived to be 110 and owned her house. She lived on a plantation her parents were slaves. This is how close that is to me. You know, so I let everyone know those stories, and they don't get the books in Cairo about that. They didn't get the books in France, but they had me, and they got the internet. So now you got to go check. So I think in answer to the book ban, you know, we just keep, because what you said, Michelle, is true. This is not new. They didn't, you know, this ain't new. They're talking about it now. Now it's more public. Now it's proliferated quicker because of social media. But they've always been erasing us. Okay, you could try. It's not gonna work. You know, and that's the only way for us, in my opinion, to get through it. Do everything everywhere. Like he said, walk and chew gum. You know, but this networks like this, like, so now all of us, we know each other now, you know, and so now everyone I know is going to know all of you. That's how that works. And we're just going to keep moving it forward, build our community. And that's how we're going to answer the book ban. They could ban the books. Okay. I wish you would. I got something for you. This is my answer to the book ban.
I think also the book bans are, can you, everybody hear me? I had to put my earpiece in. Okay. The book bans are, to me, as a result of self-publishing. I really believe that. I believe we have gotten too much power to tell our own story. We can blog. I can go on social media. I can go live. You can't stop the communication cycle in this day and age. If somebody don't like you, what you do, they just go live on social media. They can get hundreds of thousands of people to hear their voice. 20 years ago, before social media, that was not possible. If you wanted to complain, you had to fill out a suggestion form at the front of the store. You understand? And if you didn't like the way you were treated, a lot of times you had to run for office to get something done. Well, social media, digital marketing, technology has given all of us this extreme power. I can say, just like this platform right here, no one owns PR Solutions. That's my company. No one owns Black Writers Workspace. That's my company. Direct to Author. That's my company. No one owns it. They can't just pop in here and say, we're going to take your grants, your funding. So that's what they're doing now. You're beholden to the federal government. We're going to take your funding so that you can now say what we want you to say. It's about controlling the narrative. So, but banning books is, we're going to get all these books off the shelf so we can tell the history we want to tell. And then they're going to slowly start censoring what we can put out there. But while we've got this opportunity, that's why now in the title for this session is capitalized. We need to do it now. Talk about COVID. Talk about the economy. Talk about what's happening in our communities. Talk about these things in real time. Write about them. Blog about them. That is so, so important. So that was a great round. And we're going to talk now about a little bit of publishing. I'm going to give you some facts. Anybody want to start with this one? This is good stuff. Are we getting it done in the publishing world, or does the publishing world need a makeover? Does it need a makeover? Some of the facts. In 2021, 9% of children's books published were written by Black authors. 9%. When we look at self-published books, all I see is a bunch of beautiful Black children's books. But they're giving numbers from where? From traditional publishers. 2022, 80% of writers and authors workforce was white. Okay, 80%. Only 6.9 was two races, 6.6 were Black. So people who have the key positions to edit in these editorial rooms are 80% white. So we're not getting the book deals. Now, some of you may say, I don't want a book deal, but this is important because what happens when a book is picked up by Simon Schuster? The marketing power behind it. The books that are being read are books that we're being told to read because marketing is that influential. I'm a marketing person. I tell you, I understand the power of marketing. If you put $50,000 in marketing or $100,000 in marketing behind a book, that's what people are going to see. That's what's going to be in their feed. That's what's going to show up first on Google. So when you put in Black books, it's a book by an influencer. It's a book by an athlete. It's a memoir by an entertainer. And of course, what happens? They become bestsellers. It doesn't mean that they are a great book. It just means they've got the marketing dollars behind it. So we have to pay attention to what books are being published. Even if we don't want a traditional publishing deal, we have to keep that in mind because that's how the narrative is controlled. I am not saying that books that get publishing deals aren't good books. That's not what I'm saying. I am saying, though, that it's only a few of us who are getting these deals. A few. How many books in 2021 that was published, traditionally published by Black people? 5.9%. That's nothing. That's a drop in the bag. We're 13% of the population, but people don't want to read our books. How true is that? So what's happening in the publishing world, guys? Let's talk about it. And does it need a makeover? How do we change this? Do we just stick to our self-publishing and control the narrative, or do we find a way to make sure that the publishing community hears our voice and appreciates us for what we're bringing to the table, which is good work? Anybody? Chime in.
Yeah, this is something that I've been looking at for a while. As I mentioned earlier, I know that my position in the publishing world as an author publisher, as a Black woman, like I said earlier, 4%. I'm part of the group of 4% of Black women who have a publishing company, not necessarily traditional. That's the goal one day, but the finances, the money needs to be there. The backing needs to be there. And visibility needs to be there. Knowledge needs to be there. We have, and I wanted to kind of speak about the book ban a little bit, but I also want to talk about this because they're related. First thing first, like you said, controlling the narrative. We have someone who has openly said, and they could come back and say, well, this was a joke, but they said they like them dumb and uneducated. Why? Oh, because knowledge is power. But if you like them dumb and uneducated, and if we can take away books that make people smart and educated and expose them to diversity, because if we're being honest, the global diversity of the world is not accurately represented in the books that are being shared. As you've said, as we've seen with the statistics, who's controlling the narrative? Oh, the 80%. The 80% is controlling the narrative. So what do? So we continue, regardless whether DEI is a thing, which when that first came out, I said, oh, this is just a trend. This is a trend. I said, we'll see this roll back after time, and here it is. But it's important for people of color to show up in these spaces and to prevail and to excel and to withstand the storms. It's not easy. It's not easy publishing books. It's not easy finding authors who want to be seen. I think as a publisher, I've come across a lot of authors, and it could just be my unique experience. I've come across a lot of authors who are kind of shy. They don't, the marketing aspect is, that's not something that they really want to do. I've come across a lot of authors who say, well, I just want to tell my story. I don't, as an author, I'm not really big on the marketing aspect. Well, I'm sorry. If you're a Black author, you have to become big on the marketing aspect if you want your story to be seen. It just is what it is. And so at that point, it becomes knowledge. Pick up a book. You write books, so you know that there's a book out there on marketing. You know that there's something that you can do to market your book. This is something that I am adamant and, as you can see, very passionate about. Marketing your book. Don't just write the book. The next step is to market the hell out of that thing. Put $5 behind it. Hold off on something else. Put some money behind your work. Invest in your work. Get seen. So these stories can be told. Yes, it's important that as Black people, we curate books and lists and stuff like that for our children in our communities. But it's not us. It's the other groups that need to hear our stories. We know our story as Black people, but my neighbor, my Mexican neighbor next door, they don't know a dang thing about Black history. It's them that needs to know what happened with Black folks. Black people, we know the stories. It's other cultures that need to know the stories as well, because they play a huge role in all of this. We're all connected regardless. And so marketing is an aspect. Telling our stories, being seen, showing up is absolutely important. But it's not anything different. We knew that the book publishing industry was predominantly white. So what do? We, like Tyler Perry said, create our own table, and we excel at the tables that we create. We put money behind those who are doing the work and doing the work well. We've seen different movements pop off, Black Lives Matter movement, for example, pop off and just totally mess up the money, right? And it's like, how do you get that big and mess up the money? Like, those are resources. Anyways, that's what I think that we need to see is we need the dollars, because that $50,000 in a book marketing budget, what? Come on.
Let me hear from some other people about this, because I think it's important that that we talk about it. I know everybody doesn't understand the importance of this, but publishing is still a highly I won't say racist, I'll just say biased industry. It's a very biased industry. Okay. And we're in this thing and we're talking about how do we change the narrative? How do we control the voice? How do we make money at this? There are so many Black writers who are publishing annually. There are 1 million books that are self-published every year. 1 million. Think about that. So it is saturating the book market, and it can hurt the market. It can help the market. But at the end of the day, a lot of those books are our books, because if only 5.9 of us are getting book deals, then we know that we're doing a lot of self-publishing. But it's not fair, because what it says is that there are people sitting in rooms reading our manuscripts and saying, no one wants to hear about the Black experience.
You said that.
Do y'all see us flapping, hitting them fans and doing them dance? Y'all know how magical we are. Are you serious? You want to hear about our culture? But yet there's still people in rooms saying, no, people don't want to read about the Black experience, and it's not true. So somebody was about to say something. I think I heard Andrew.
I was going to say, you cannot tear down the master's house with the master's tools. So we are unreasonable to think that this industry is going to love us. They won't. They don't have to. It's their stuff. Okay, you can have your stuff. We need to get our own. I'm a fan of self-everything. I reinvented the wheel in the Mimiverse because I don't like how that wheel was rolling. I want to see how it works on my side. So in terms of publishing, we need to self-publish because they're not going to do it. They don't have to do it. Okay, I don't want to waste my time with people who hate me. And for me, it's boots on the ground. They are racist. Okay, I'm cool with that. You have a right to be racist, but I'm going to exercise my right to have dignity and not give you the pleasure of hearing my story. You don't deserve it. I will go to someone who deserves my story, or I will self-publish. And I think as a people, that's where we need to be.
Everybody out there, drop your questions. I agree. I'm sorry, I hate to cut people off, but we are already an hour and 18 minutes into this. This is just crazy how quickly it goes. Kev, go for it.
So first of all, I wanted to present a different view of banned books. I remember when Eazy-E went to the White House and he was blasted for that, the Ronald Reagan and he said something I'll never forget. He said, I couldn't pay for this attention. If nothing would please me more if Governor Landry got a hold of No Fat Tuesday and blasted it, I would be ecstatic because it's my understanding, Michelle, that when you ban a book, the reason they want to ban Huckleberry Finn is because of the N-word. And in academia, 50% of us want to keep it in and 50% of us want to keep it out. Tupac said that he was the rose that grew from the concrete, right? And what we should do as Black scholars, I consider myself a Black scholar, Black authors. I touched on it earlier. We have By the Block, we have investment companies, we have think tanks, but we don't support them. When I say we, I mean the majority of Black America does not support these things the way that they should. Once I reach my Kickstarter goal for No Fat Tuesday, you'll see me going around the country. I can't do that if I'm tied to a classroom. And our people need help in understanding why they should support Black publishing. Black people have a hard time supporting things that they can't see and touch. And if you think about it, literature, you can touch a book, but it's bigger than that, Michelle. And I think that we should talk about that. We have to educate our people on why you should support Black authors. It's very difficult to get people I've known for 30 years. It's difficult to get them to write a book review for me. And when I figured out one of the reasons it's hard to get a book review, Michelle, most people don't know what to write. So I'm going to create a series of 2-minute videos, addressing these things. Someone put on Facebook 6 ways you can support an author that don't cost money. The one that costs the money is that you actually buy the book. But when you have a Kickstarter campaign, you see who donated and when. And so, again, we have to do a better job at educating the masses as to why you should buy Black books, why everyone should have a copy of the ISIS papers. There's different books that should be in every house. Every Black boy and every Black man should have a copy of the autobiography of Malcolm X. There's just certain books that I believe are timeless. Africa, Mother of Western Civilization. I could go on and on. But I do believe that it is our responsibility, our sacred responsibility, to educate the masses as to why it is important and relevant, sacred, vital for the masses to support Black authors.
Andrew, we're going to go to you, and I agree. I think that's what we're doing. That's why we're doing this. We have to keep talking about the importance of it. And it is important, without a doubt, that we advocate for it. Very quickly, I put out on social media one Friday night. I went to 3 different book club Facebook pages, and total they had about 125,000 followers. And I posted a question. I said, how many people on this page have read a book written by a Black independent author in the last year? That was my question. It was a survey. I woke up 3 hours later to 2,000 comments, and I was called a racist for asking the question. Mm-hmm. I was told that I don't care about who wrote the book. I'm only looking for good books. I don't care about if the author is Black. I buy all kinds of books. We know that's not true. Mm-hmm. We know that's not true. Because if it was true, our books would be doing things like John Grisham's books are doing them, like James Patterson's books are doing. That's not true. But it was a very insightful conversation to hear people. There were those who were just angry that I would have the audacity to believe that people care about the color of the author. And then there were people who said, you know what, you got me. I do not read books by Black authors. Because A, I don't know where to find them. B, I'm not looking for them. So I'm trying to do better with my kids. So I say all that to say that, we have a problem that stops and starts with, to me, intentionality. People mm-hmm. have to go out and seek our work. Andrew, go for it. I'm sorry I took up some of your time.
No. And I'm glad, because I remember you have spoken to this issue. Getting back to the whole piece of marketing, look, this is just a message for any author. If you felt compelled to write the story, you have to be your biggest advocate in order to amplify the story. Even if you're not a fan of being on screen or on the mic or whatever, nobody's going to know unless you speak up and speak out. Now, do you have to do it entirely by yourself? No. But do you have to varying degrees, self-advocate? Yes. Part of it comes back to some of the things that we said before. One of the big issues with marketing, real quick, people put it online and think that's it. Everybody isn't online, which comes back to one of the themes I said before. your independent bookstores, your book clubs, forums like this, even on the press and media end, your traditional and contemporary methods. You've got to figure out, if you're trying to reach an audience, to be aware of who you are and the work you're doing and the impact you're hoping to make. You have to be out there whether you like it or not. Like they said, closed mouths don't get fed. And if your stomach is growling, manna ain't falling from the sky. You got to get out your seat. It's just not. So a lot of what I'm thinking kind of comes back to a lot of themes everybody said. Our stories are important, but we have to be the primary advocates for sharing this importance and relevance. And we have to be open, whether we're comfortable or not. We have to be open to forums like this. We have to be open to going out where the folks are. One of the themes talked about, well, this isn't happening, that isn't happening. Well, people know what they know and they don't know what they don't know. And if there's something that we know that is going to help, whether the authors on this panel, the authors who are not on the panel, readers, people who have a want, or people who need to develop the want, we have to be at the forefront and we have to use our platforms and visibility accordingly. Otherwise, we're not going to see the change at the level that we hope to in regards to advocacy and making sure people know our stories and respect our stories. You don't have to like them, but you definitely have to respect them.
I agree. I love this. I love this conversation about intentionality, about working hard for marketing. I know we're not here to talk marketing. We have talked about marketing a lot on Pen Posse, because when we have a marketing session, everybody tunes in. They want to know, how do I market my book? You have a lot of people out there who are writing and they believe that once they publish that book, it's just gonna be a bestseller. And you're like, this is the hard part. You take off the creative hat and now you are a business owner and your product is your book.
Yeah.
And you have to go out there and you have to push that book. And the truth is that culturally, and someone said this one day, a lot of times I hate to say it can sometimes be a Black community challenge too, coming out and supporting me. Whereas for those who have a very mixed group of friends, you may have more of your white friends who may say, I'll buy it and read it. I've got people who will buy my book and never read it. And I'm going, I need you to read and review it. That's what I need you to do. But it becomes like, oh, well, I have time, blah, blah, blah. So it becomes a very difficult thing. But this is a good conversation to have around the fact that why now? It's because if we don't understand how tough it is to get these deals or to market our books, then, we may not publish. If we're looking at book bans, if we're looking at the challenges with DEI and teaching, Black history and things that are being muted, we may not publish, but we have to continue to move forward and we have to continue to publish. So, Kebra, I haven't heard from you. Kebra, I haven't heard from you. And Ayoka, you guys want to add anything?
Yes. Another thing I think we need to always talk about is supporting independent and Black-owned bookstores. I know most of us do, especially Black-owned bookstores, but I know that I've been in conversation with a Black-owned bookstore in DC to talk about how we can partner. So Black-owned bookstores and Black independent authors, what does that look like? Now, as we got into conversation, of course, there were a lot of challenges that I wouldn't know because I don't own a bookstore and know the logistics, but that is a conversation that is continuing. And I was happy to hear that this particular bookstore, she with another bookstore that's, I can't remember where the other one is, they started this Black Bookstore Coalition. And this is a topic that it's a recurring topic that they are trying to wrestle. And I said, listen, I think you need to be in conversation with the authors as well to find solutions, because, every bookstore, they operate differently. So at first they were trying to figure out how to kind of have a blanket solution, and they saw that that wasn't going to work. And then a lot of Black bookstores have little or no staff, and so that's another issue. So there are a lot of issues that we need to understand, but having the conversation is what needs to happen, and figuring out the solutions to that, as well as small Black owned presses, in addition to self-publishing. I think that's the way to go, versus trying to roll the boulder up the hill with traditional publishing that is within a system, right? And it's going to reflect that system. And I mean, yeah, little whatever. I just don't think that is the path that we need to take. I think we need to circle the wagons, so to speak, and really lean into the resources within our communities. Yes, we need dollars behind that. I don't disagree with that, but figuring out how to get those dollars from within our community. And Khefa talked about it. It's having these conversations. It's letting people know how important this is, because I think a lot of times people read a book because it's a form of escapism. There's so much going on that it's like, I just want to read this book and curl up, and there's time for that too. But we need, as authors and writers and readers, to talk about and say it louder why this is important, why it's important to support Black authors, why it's important to support Black owned bookstores, why it's important to support, if you can, Black owned small press, because it's about getting the stories to the people at the end of the day.
Kebra, you wanna add in to that?
Yeah, I agree that it is important to support Black-owned bookstores. As I stated earlier, I'm in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and I've partnered with the Book Doc in their author literacy. It's called the Author Lighthouse, that they have, where as an author, I'm able to put my books in her store. And as well as they have different events going on throughout the year. So any author that partner with them through their Lighthouse program, you can pick and choose a few of their events and come in and do your book signing, or I think they got one for Juneteenth that's coming up. And the Book Doc is like one of the oldest Black bookstores in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. It's pretty small, but so many big time authors, celebrities. I think the last time I went there, Ricky Smiley was promoting his book. He was there doing a book signing. So it is very important. I just wish that we have more than what we have, because you just see the typical bigger ones, the Barnes and Nobles and the Christian bookstore, which is nothing wrong with it, because it's nothing wrong with it. But I agree. I think we need more Black bookstores. So I was a vendor at the Dallas Soul Food Festival last weekend, and also with my company, I created these journals, and they had nothing but Black women and Black kids on the journal. And I did like sorority inspired, and I did some with little Black girls. They seeing themselves on the journal, and when you open the journal, it says, I'm beautiful, I'm loved. So every page had something to represent for them to feel good inside. And I can tell you the number one comments that I was getting when I was selling my journals was, these are some beautiful journals. We don't see these kind of journals. You don't see these in the stores. So what can we do, with all of this madness going on with the world, with them trying to erase Black history? You can try to erase it, but it's not going to be erased. You can't erase history. And so what can we do to get our books, our journals, anything that's representing us in these major market, now that they're trying to take DEI away, which DEI doesn't necessarily represent Black as a whole. I think people don't really understand that DEI doesn't necessarily mean for us as Black people. But when it comes to the exclusion, I mean, when it comes to the diversity, you know, and then someone like me with a disability, you know, it comes to me in that matter. But for the most part, it's not about removing Black from from particular stores, or, but you guys know what I'm saying. But people need to know that's not what DEI really stands for. But what can we do as a whole? You know, there's so much red tape to get our stuff in the stores. Because even if you think about it, you go in the store, you see one little small section for Black hair products, and that's it. We got this one little corner, right? So what can we do as a whole when it comes to books? And our book, because there's so many Black authors that are out there with so much, I mean, wonderful books. I mean, I've published books from children's book to biblical to Black history, and there's so much great information out there. So what can we do? And maybe somebody on the panel can help me understand, what can we do to get us in that place that we need to be heard? Because the only time people really hear from us is we're doing our own marketing, or if it's a big time author that's already known.
Well, I want to say this because I can speak to that, because I believe in being proactive and not, you know, just saying we're going to do something but doing it. That's why I created Direct to Authors, because I needed to see us be able to promote our work and get paid how we choose. That's why it's called Direct to Author, because you put your book and you can, if you sell your books yourself on your website, you can just, it'll click right into your website and you can make a purchase. I'm not making any money off the sale of your book. So I wanted to make sure that online we had a book marketplace for our work. So we have to be intentional about creating the types of platforms that we need. First, I want to speak to the small bookstore issue, because I'm here in New Orleans. I host a book fair every year. We're going to have it May 3rd. I invite everybody to come out. Last year, I had over 80 authors to come into the city. It's a dynamic weekend. Year before that, we had 75. It continues to grow. So we have tables. We do it at one of the most beautiful venues here in New Orleans at City Parks Pavilion of Two Sisters. And I've made it open to all authors, but typically 99% of my authors are African American that come out. One year I had 2 white authors. Last year I had 1 Hispanic author. I don't discriminate. You're welcome to come, but it's great to see us all come out. But I will say this: small bookstores are not always very interested in working with independent authors. Okay.
Sure.
That is just fact. I understand there are people talk about Black bookstores. That's great. But if they don't have a program set aside specifically for independent authors, it's very hard to get in the store. And getting in a store is like getting in the library. Doesn't mean it's great for you. Because if I got 3 of your books and they are behind all my bestsellers and all my, you know, other authors, you're not going to get the visibility that you need.
Right.
It's like putting Coke on the shelf. Okay. Coke distribute their own product, because when they go into a grocery store, they want to make sure they got top seat. They want to be in the best place. So they hire their own distributors to do it. So when you're in a bookstore, and if your bookstore isn't really keen on helping independent authors, like it doesn't have an independent author section, which is what we need to be asking for, then you really are, you're butting heads with all the big boys. And it's very, very hard to get visibility. So we have to challenge these small independent bookstores, especially the Black ones, to do more for us. When I go in and I say, can you put my book in? They'll say, yeah, I'll put it in here. They'll take 1, put it on a shelf. It'll stay there for a minute, and then they'll send it back to me. Okay, that didn't help me. I need to know, what can we do? How can we partner? How can we make this? Well, your book is self-published and it's on Amazon, and we really don't do that. You need to be on Ingram Spark. So that's the first thing. If you're going to self-publish, put your book on Ingram Spark, number 1. Secondly, challenge them. Tell them, why are you in a community with so many great Black writers and you are a Black bookstore, but you do nothing for independent authors? Be very intentional about that, because a lot of our bookstores don't do it. Secondly, people are going back to bookstores. Barnes and Noble they are building stores. Now, what does Barnes and Noble do that a lot of your small bookstores won't do? They will let you come in and do a signing. I just did one 2 weeks ago. I do one every year. Call your local Barnes and Noble, because they have finally figured out that bookstores were the hub for readers for years, right? Now they're going back to, we want to be the person who's working with the local authors, because a lot of the small bookstores don't have, like you said, the manpower, the space, the time, the energy. They got to make money. Do you know how many books you got to sell to keep a bookstore open? I ran malls for 10 years. I can tell you, it's not a very lucrative business. So what you do is you bring in the Ricky Smileys, you bring in the, the Stephen A. Smiths, you bring in all the top writers, and you have events, and those events help you to pay your bills. So, but when you say as an independent author, will you do an event for me? You're not big enough. So we have to challenge them on this. We have to challenge them. Don't just say, oh, take my book. But what are you doing for independent authors? Can we host something on a Friday night? Can we come out here and do this? So, Kev, I'm gonna get to you as well, because I wanna make sure that everyone, because I know we talk about these things. It's like, I love Black bookstores. I just posted something on Black Writers Workspace Instagram page last night. 75 Black bookstores. Love them, love them, love them. And I know they have their challenges because I've worked with them. But we have to keep our foot on them a little bit about not turning away from us because we're independent. That's important. That is important. And Barnes and Noble, they will. I have one down the street from me. I call her up and I say, I'm bringing 8 authors. Come on. Now, she's going to take 40% of the sales, but she's got a niche market. People are already in there buying books. If she's more willing to work with me than the small Black bookstores, we got a challenge. And we've got to challenge them on this. Do something for us. So anybody out there, if you're a Black bookstore, do something for your independent authors locally. That is important if you really are serious about helping us. Don't just focus on the best sellers. That is not fair to all the writers out here who are doing some great work. Kelsey, you had a question?
Well, I was just going to say, I've had some very negative experiences with small Black bookstores. And what I think that Black authors should do and Black scholars should do, we need a united, organized front. We should. By the way, one of the things I'm going to do is offer a first-time nonfiction author class, and I'm also going to offer writing seminars for teens. So I understand the plight of the small bookstore, but I'd be remiss to say there's the greatest bookstore, and I'm gonna use the name because they're going out of business. But Essewan Books. When I was at USC, I sent thousands of people to Essewan Books, and when I told them, I wrote a book, and they didn't feature my book, that hurt. I'd be lying if I said it didn't. I spent a lot of money with Essewan Bookstore. I've had negative experiences with Black bookstores, the one here that shall go unnamed. And what I've decided to do is to, I launched a Kickstarter program, which, by the way, I put the link in, and I do need your support, guys. I would hope that you donate $1 and share the link. We have to build up our own so that if we spot the next, imagine somewhere out there's another George G.M. James, there's another Francis Cress Welsing, and if we have to support them, so be it, But I always get back to organization. We have to organize. We have amongst ourselves. We have to understand technology and how it can be used to market. We have to help each other we have to help each other train readers to write a review. That is so difficult to get reviews. And so I think that if we can pool our resources, we will be successful.
Okay. Somebody else wanted to chime in? I thought Ms. Winn? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wanted to answer Kebra's question about what can we do as far as, getting our books out there. And just from an educational academic standpoint, My bachelor's degree is in mass communication. So I've studied journalism, I've studied the public relations and marketing, and just understanding PO. It's an acronym for paid, owned, and earned media. Dabbling into a lot of that. You can pay for advertising, which we've already kind of talked about. You have your own platforms. We're already doing that. But the earned media is what takes time. I think that some authors think, oh, I published a book today, it should be a bestseller tomorrow. It might be a bestseller tomorrow, but for a week, okay? Let's not act like, okay, which is good. I'm not saying that that's not horrible, but we got to be for real, like be serious about this, right? Organic and earned word of mouth comes with compound. It comes with continuing to publish books, right? A lot of the bestsellers, even if they are traditionally published, when I look at the USA bestseller list, they've published an upward of 50 plus books. These are people who've been in the space for a while,
Right.
And so we have to look at these examples and say, okay, let me be for real. I've published 5 books. Do I expect for that earned media? Really? Is that something that I really expect? I don't know. I don't know. But if that's not something that you're seeing, that those reviews, that word of mouth, that organic attraction, I wouldn't spend that much time on that. So I would focus my time on what I can do with the platforms that I have and what I can do with my dollar bill, right? So I would focus on that in order to get that word of mouth attention, to get, readers talking about you. People support who they know. People support who they like. So it just is what it is. And so that's where being authentic comes in. It's doing the things that we can do. I can be myself all day long. You don't have to like me. I could care less. But there are people out there that love the work that I do, that appreciate who I am. They enjoy my spirit. And those are the people that are going to say, hey, have you heard about Winn Publications? She's publishing books by everybody. She's doing, word of mouth has been something that has kept my small independent book publishing company going for 7 years. Okay. And so this is something that I know it works. But you have to put the time in. You have to play the long game. You can't get upset at year 3 that things are not going how you want them to go. You have to stick with it. When we're talking about legacy is not built in 5 years, 10 years. It's not built in one generation, right? Legacy is generation after generation. Okay, something that we always talk about in the Black community is breaking generational curses. Okay, but what about generational blessings, right? So something that I'm doing specifically in my family is putting my daughter on, right? So she's already publishing books, and this is something that we will continue because that earned media, that's where a lot of the magic happens. People are not going to buy from who they don't know. And a lot of times, one of the biggest areas that I've seen readers do is from recommendations. We've seen it on Book Talk. We've seen it on social media. People buy books that other people are talking about. If nobody's talking about your book, you need to figure out today, how can I get more people talking about my book on social media? And a lot of times you have to invest in it. This is just the name of the game, right? So then you have to say, okay, can I put a line in my budget for investing in influencers? Okay, you might say, Arilia, I don't know how to do that. Well, that sounds like the solution is right there in your face. Learn how to do it. Take your time to do it. We can take time to do everything else, right? So it's just a matter of value and importance. I'm not going to put my money behind something that I don't know the value of. Just because.
All right, we need to get to let everybody get an opportunity to give their last. I'm sorry. No, yeah, I love the passion, and I understand, and you're absolutely right. We have to really put the time and energy behind it. We're on our last 10 minutes, and I want everybody to get an opportunity to wrap up and kind of give a little bit of inspiration to our writers out there. Just going back and saying why it's important to go on and publish these books. I think that what we've said basically is that There are so many reasons to do it. We want to control the narrative. We can't get distracted by what's happening out in this world. Someone talked about DEI. It's a distraction, everybody. A lot of us don't even know anyone who's been impacted per se. Some of us do, but it doesn't mean that it's all Black people that are being impacted by it. Also, it's not. It's something that, once again, we've got 4 years. So if we're gonna fall apart, let's go on and get that out the way, because we gotta get down to work. If we're gonna go on and fall apart about what's happening, go on and get that done, because we need to get to work. What I would love to see, and this is my spill on it, is ownership. I would love to see us publish more books. I would love to see us have our own platforms. I would love to see us as a Black community work together, not just highlighting, like I said about the Black small bookstores, not just highlighting some books, but giving people an opportunity to show themselves. Um, Anything I do, I invite you guys to. I started Black Writers Workspace during COVID, after I dropped my second book, and it went from 10 people to 7. Now it's over 17,000. And we have workshops and book fairs and all types of things, because I believe in the Black literary community. It saved me. It kept me going as a young girl. I believe in it. And so that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. So I do encourage everyone to continue to write right now. Get it out there. Find ways to avoid. Don't worry about what they're saying. We're not going to teach this. You teach it. You do things within your community. You be the leader in your community to make sure that our young people are getting the things that they need. So now it's time for all of us to be intentional about what we do, what we buy, what we read, and how we spend our time and money. So that's what I wanted to add to that. Ms. Moore, let's start with you at the bottom of the screen. If you want to give some words of encouragement to our readers and our writers and our readers out there.
Yes, I would just say, as Ms. Jackson was just saying, we just have to firstly believe in ourselves. It all starts with a pen. Basically, when my authors come to me, they'll say, well, I don't know how to write. And I say, well, you got to start somewhere, and then you will get there, because people want to write a book. And the first thing is that they don't know what to talk about. They don't know if it's, I'm like, don't worry about all that. We got editors, we got formatters. You just put your vision into pen and paper and do what you need to do to start. And I would just say, don't let anyone discourage you of what you need to do. I mean, if you feel like you have a story that you want to tell, go ahead and tell that story. And that's just that. And if you believe you have a story, write it down. With the what they say, what God said, write it down, make it plain. That's how you got to start. And that's just my words of encouragement. Happy Saturday.
Thank you for being with us. Thank you so much. Stay with us. And just thank you so much for your insight. Ayoka?
I want us to keep having these conversations. I think once we have the conversation, we need to leave with action items. That's, that was my favorite thing from my previous career, action items. Okay, so what we're going to do now. And I think Mimi talked about it. I talked about it some. In our personal spheres of influence, we need to share what was talked about here today. We need to share everybody's contacts, as much as we have them, and encourage people to support all of these Black authors and ask those questions. Michelle, like you said, you asked, it seemed like it was in a mixed group, but are you reading Black independent authors? Are you reading Black authors beyond the couple that get touted, and every Black content creator is talking about? Are you looking beyond that? Because you're missing out on some great stories if you're not. And so challenging each other to look for those stories and find those stories, and also, again, impacting our personal spheres of influence and communities, the children in our communities, whether you're a parent or not, that you come in contact with. Are they reading Do they understand the importance of reading and getting them excited about it? You know, my mom, when I was little, and I used to think, oh man, she only gave books for presents. And I didn't understand that until I got older. And that's what I do. The children in my life, they get books. I mean, don't get me wrong, my kids, I used to give them other stuff too, but they were getting books, stacks of books. Because even if the adult and their parent is not doing it, they need to have people around them that excite them about books. Because that's, I mean, do I have to hit George Benson? You know, the children are our future. Like, you know, they have to know the importance of literacy and books, and not even being like talked at about it, but giving them books that get them excited and their little imaginations are ping, 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 because that's how you excite the and encourage the next writers or the next screenwriters or the next whatever astronauts. You know, talk about the astronaut book. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you so much for being with us. That is great. If you can, drop your information in the contact area so people will know how to contact you. For those of you who have been with us for 2 hours, we didn't get a lot of questions today. I'm shocked. We normally get a ton of questions. So it could be a good thing too. People are just listening. And actually, this is kind of a hard topic if you really think about it. You know, in this environment, I'm learning, you know, people are very hesitant. We're not sure what's going to happen next. We don't know what to do. We don't know what to say. And it's a critical moment, and that's why I wanted to talk now, because it's the beginning of something that we don't know what's going to happen, and it is scary. So I want our writers to know we need you more at this moment than any moment. And I mean, you think about back in the 40s and the 50s with all the Black artists out there who were, you know, walking into the back doors of hotel rooms, I mean, hotels, when they had to perform, you know, when they were told they had to sit in certain areas. These are people who were still being creators in the midst of segregation, in the midst of times where they didn't know what would happen when they came off of the stage in a Mississippi, you know, small club, and they're performing. They didn't know if it was going to be a gang of people behind the hotels ready to hurt them, but they were still doing their art. They were still being creative because they knew that moment needed them. And this moment needs all of us. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this, is because we cannot become afraid to keep telling our stories. That is so important. Ms. Winn, you want to wrap up and give everybody some words of encouragement?
Yes, I encourage you to seek out opportunities to publish. If you're a writer listening and you're a reader that's watching, seek out the opportunities, seek out the authors, seek out the diversity that we know is so important. And I mean, that's really it. Seek out the opportunities, seek out what it is that you wish to see. Like someone had said earlier, write the book that you want to read. Well, in the same nature, seek it out, it's out there. Anything that you can imagine, it's probably out there. And so
that is excellent. You've given us so much great information. It's always good to have someone who's publishing books and working with multiple authors on the screen to share your advice. So thank you so much for being with us as well.
Thank you.
Mimi?
Well, I teach a class called Writing Autobiographical Fiction, and I work with various organizations around the country because of Zoom. And I found that people who write love to read. So in my classes, I give them Black authors, Black books, Black stories. And when they see me, they go, oh my gosh, she's so interesting. Or your life is very interesting. I'm like, yeah, you need to read these people too. So I'm going to do more of that just from hearing you guys. So send me lists. I'm going to do more of that. I'm going to incorporate those books in my classes. This is kind of how we can build our community doing that. So I will be hitting you up for names of authors and stuff. And I want to say, you asked the question, what legacy will our work leave for the next generation? I want to close out with that. It will leave a legacy of power, intellectualism, and a more dignified existence than our parents' generation could attain. This is the legacy of us being authors and speakers and activists in publishing.
Excellent.
Thank you for
Thank you so
inviting me here.
much for
I
being
really
with us.
appreciate it.
We didn't even get to all of our questions. 2 hours. I know people think this is a long time, but really it goes by really quickly. So we're going to come back at some point and talk about music and movies and some of the, and leaving a legacy, which is important. Andrew?
Yeah, just a couple of simple things to think about. As others have said, writing is basically like running a marathon. You're not going to always get the immediate results. However, you have to have a sprinter start in order to get in, dive in, build up the habits and passion and love for writing, as well as just doing the things that we're all identifying that we need to do. So the folks that are out there who have been thinking about writing, just like the theme of today, now is the time. Make sure you get off to the fast start, but you've got to remember you are running a marathoner's pace, because as others have alluded to, this is about longevity. If you're going to leave a legacy, it doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. Like I like to kid around, when you go to a cookout, the best meat is marinated, which means it takes time. But if you're willing to take the time, you're willing to jot down some notes, as I was jotting down today, and accordingly, there's great things you can do, whether it's your volume of sales, but even the greatest thing is how our work can change the lives and change the perspectives of people that we meet, greet, and are amongst. And I'll just close out with this. Technology is a wonderful thing, but this is still ultimately about people. And you have to have a willingness to be out among the people in order to effectuate the change that you're trying to see.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Always, Andrew. I think you've been on here about what, 4 or 5 times now. This is great. Keep joining us.
It's a few, but each time blessing, seriously. And from all the authors, like I said, I'm taking notes as well. So thank you to everybody.
Excellent. Kev?
So I'll be brief. My encouragement to any young person that wants to write, I would say you need to do 3 things. Get a mentor, know your genre, know your why, and be willing to do your homework and understand what the term authorpreneur means, because that's what you're going to have to become.
Yeah.
And I'd like to thank you, Michelle. This was great. We need to, maybe we should do this once a month. Maybe we should put something together where we actually have some type of battle plan.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, I'm just throwing that out there, Michelle. So, but this was great top. When I saw the topic 2 weeks ago, I was like, oh wow, that's like I gotta make time for that. And thanks again. Maybe we should do this once a month.
Yeah, actually, the Pen Posse is supposed to be once a month, and sometimes I'll put a topic out and we get people that are interested, and then sometimes we get no one that's interested. And I try to vibe off of the interest with our authors, because I like the group to be diverse and have some new faces and new people that I get to meet. And so most of you I've never met before. So thank you so much for being on here. We're going to wrap up. We're about 3 minutes over. A couple of things I do want to say to those out there is we've got a couple of events coming up. First and foremost, we have a new website, and it's called the blackwritersworkspace.com. And you can go on there. You can see all the activities that we're doing. You can register for a Chapter 1 writing competition, which we're now taking submissions for it. We will be taking submissions until June 1st. You would need to provide at least 10 pages of written work. It is open to unpublished and self-published writers of African descent. We give cash prizes as well as awards and an interview. So please do that. We are having the Black Ink Book Festival here in New Orleans, May 3rd. We have tables available. Please come out. It's going to be a wonderful event. We have Reading in the Garden. We're going to be pairing it with a Black Film Festival. This year, we're a Black short film premiere. So you can watch some Black short films that were actually made by by filmmakers here in Louisiana. We also have now a new meetup here in New Orleans, and we've been meeting at the libraries once a month. So always something going on. And we have on our website our master classes. So if you are interested in learning from some authors that have had a great deal of success, as well as some film directors, we have a whole group of masterclass courses. There is a executive membership fee. It's only like $69. You get access to all of our masterclasses, past and in the future. And so, and you get discounts on a lot of our events. So be sure to look into that. So thank you, everyone. Stay on the screen, but we're going to end the live stream. Thank you so much for being with us.